The diamond on my finger caught the light, sending sparkles dancing across the pristine white tablecloth. I couldn't help but smile, twisting the ring back and forth, still not quite believing it was there. After 10 years, Michael had finally proposed. "Emily, dear, you're positively glowing." Eleanor, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, reached across the table and patted my hand. "I'm so thrilled," Michael finally popped the question. "Lord knows, I've been dropping hints for years." I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Trust me, Eleanor, I've been dropping hints too. But you know Michael, always moving at his own pace." Eleanor's smile faltered for just a moment, so quickly I almost missed it. She took a sip of her tea, her perfectly manicured nails clinking against the delicate china. "Yes, well, that's my Michael. Always been a bit stubborn." Something in her tone made me pause. "Is everything all right, Eleanor?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, of course, dear. It's just..." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "There's something you should know about our family. Something I probably should have told you years ago." My heart started to race. "What is it?" Eleanor glanced around the crowded restaurant as if checking for eavesdroppers. "It's about Michael's father. The story he's told you, well, it's not entirely true." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Michael said his father died when he was young." "That's what Michael believes," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But the truth is, his father left us, abandoned us when Michael was just a baby." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What? But... Why would Michael lie about that?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "He doesn't know, Emily. I told him his father died. I couldn't bear for him to know the truth." My mind was reeling. How could Michael not know something so fundamental about his own life? And why had Eleanor kept this secret for so long? Before I could ask any more questions, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Where are you? Thought we were meeting at 2?" I glanced at my watch and cursed under my breath. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I completely lost track of time. I'm supposed to be meeting Michael to look at venues." Eleanor nodded, composing herself quickly. "Of course, dear. Go. We can talk more later." As I gathered my things, Eleanor grabbed my wrist. "Emily, please, don't say anything to Michael. Not yet. Let me be the one to tell him." I hesitated, torn between my loyalty to Michael and the pleading look in Eleanor's eyes. Finally, I nodded. "All right. But soon, okay? He deserves to know." Eleanor smiled gratefully. "Thank you, dear. You're going to make a wonderful addition to our family." As I hurried out of the restaurant, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Joy at my engagement warred with the shock of Eleanor's revelation. How well did I really know the man I was about to marry? I spotted Michael waiting outside the first venue on our list, looking handsome as ever in his tailored suit. He grinned when he saw me, pulling me in for a kiss. "There's my beautiful fiancé," he said. "Ready to start planning our future?" I forced a smile, pushing down the guilt and confusion roiling in my stomach. "Of course, let's go." As we walked into the venue, hand in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that our perfect love story was about to get a lot more complicated. I stared at my phone, my heart sinking as I read Michael's text. "Sorry, babe. Can't make it to the florist today. Work emergency." This was the 3rd time in 2 weeks he'd canceled our wedding preparations. I sighed, tossing the phone onto the couch. The excitement of planning our big day was quickly turning into frustration and doubt. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. I opened the door to find Eleanor standing there, a sympathetic smile on her face. "Emily, dear, I hope I'm not intruding, but I thought you might need some company today." I felt a rush of gratitude. "Eleanor, you're a lifesaver. Please, come in." As we settled in the living room with cups of tea, Eleanor asked, "So how are the wedding plans coming along?" I couldn't hold back anymore. The words tumbled out in a rush. "Honestly, they're not. Michael keeps canceling on me. It's like he doesn't even care about the wedding." Eleanor's face softened with concern. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm sure that's not true. Michael can be difficult sometimes, but he loves you." I nodded, not entirely convinced. "I know. It's just, ever since you told me about his father, I can't help but wonder what else I don't know about him." Eleanor reached out and squeezed my hand. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I never meant to cause trouble between you two. Perhaps I shouldn't have said anything." "No," I said firmly. "I'm glad you told me. I just wish Michael would open up to me more." We spent the next hour talking, Eleanor sharing stories about Michael's childhood that made me laugh and reminded me why I fell in love with him. By the time she left, I felt a little better, but the nagging doubt remained. That evening Michael came home late, looking tired and distracted. "Hey," I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "How was your work emergency?" He barely glanced at me as he loosened his tie. Oh, yeah, just a client freaking out about nothing. You know how it is." I took a deep breath. "Michael, we need to talk about the wedding. You keep canceling our appointments, and I'm starting to feel like I'm planning this whole thing alone." He finally looked at me, his expression a mix of guilt and irritation. "Come on, Em. You know how busy I am at work. Can't you handle this stuff?" His dismissive tone sparked something in me. "This is our wedding, Michael. Not just mine. It should be important to both of us." Michael's face hardened. "Of course it's important to me. I just don't see why we need to make such a big deal out of every little detail." We argued back and forth, our voices rising until we were both shouting. Finally, Michael grabbed his keys. "I need some air," he snapped, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down my face. How had we gone from the joy of our engagement to this in just a few short weeks? My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Checking in. Hope everything's okay." Without thinking, I called her back. "Eleanor?" I choked out between sobs. "Can you come over? I really need someone to talk to." "Of course, dear," she said without hesitation. "I'll be right there." As I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and guilt. I should be talking to Michael, working things out with him. Instead, I was turning to his mother for comfort. But as I waited for Eleanor to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that she understood me better than Michael did right now, and that thought terrified me more than anything else. The clock on the nightstand glared at me, 2:37 a.m. I rolled over, the empty space beside me, a cold reminder of Michael's absence. This was the third night this week he'd stayed out late, claiming it was just innocent fun with the guys. "Bachelor's last hurrah," he'd said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over Michael's name. No, I decided. I wouldn't be that person, constantly checking up on him. Instead, I opened my messages with Eleanor. "You awake?" I typed, then immediately regretted it. What kind of soon-to-be daughter-in-law texts her fiancé's mother in the middle of the night? To my surprise, a reply came almost instantly. "Can't sleep either? Want to talk?" Relief washed over me. "Michael's out again. I'm worried. Come over for breakfast tomorrow. We'll chat." The next morning I found myself sitting at Eleanor's kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee warming my hands. "I don't know what to do," I confessed. "It's like Michael's a different person lately." Eleanor's face was a mask of concern. "Has he said anything about his father?" I shook my head. "No, and I haven't brought it up. I'm scared it'll just make things worse." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Emily, dear, I'm so sorry. I never meant for my secret to cause such trouble. It's not your fault," I assured her, "but I can't help feeling like there's something Michael's not telling me." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Where are you? Woke up and you were gone." I showed Eleanor the message, my frustration bubbling over. "He's one to talk. He didn't even come home last night." Eleanor's expression hardened. "This isn't like Michael. Something's not right." As I typed a reply, another text came through. This one made my blood run cold. "Who's Vanessa? Why does she keep calling you?" I stared at the screen, confusion and anger warring inside me. "Eleanor, I don't know any Vanessa. What is he talking about?" Eleanor's face paled. "Oh, dear, I think I might know who Vanessa is." My heart raced. "What? Who?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Vanessa is Michael's father's new wife." The room spun. "What? But you said his father left when Michael was a baby. How could he?" "I'm so sorry, Emily. There's more to the story than I told you. Michael's father, he's been trying to reconnect. I've been keeping his messages from Michael, trying to protect him." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "So all this time Michael's father has been alive? Trying to contact him, and you've been hiding it?" Eleanor nodded, tears in her eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but now, with Michael acting so strangely, I'm afraid he might have found out somehow." My mind raced. Could this explain Michael's recent behavior? The late nights, the secretiveness? Was he meeting with his long-lost father behind my back? "I have to go," I said, standing abruptly. I need to talk to Michael. Eleanor grabbed my arm. Emily, wait, please be careful. Michael, he can be like his father sometimes. Unpredictable when he's upset. Her words sent a chill down my spine. What exactly was she implying? As I drove home, my emotions swirled like a storm. Anger at Michael for lying, at Eleanor for keeping secrets, at myself for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. But as I opened the front door, I froze. The house was in chaos. Drawers pulled out, contents strewn across the floor. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Michael, a suitcase at his feet and a wild look in his eyes. Michael, I whispered, fear gripping my heart. What's going on? He turned to me, his face a mask of pain and fury. I know everything, Emily. About my father, about the lies, and I know you've been talking to my mother behind my back. As he advanced towards me, I realized with terrifying clarity that I didn't know this man at all. And I had no idea what he was capable of. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I stood before the mirror, my white dress, a ghostly reflection of the bride I was supposed to be. But all I could see were the shadows of doubt in my eyes. Last night's confrontation with Michael played on repeat in my mind. His anger, his accusations, the way he'd grabbed my arm when I tried to leave. In the end, he'd broken down, sobbing about his father's betrayal and begging for forgiveness. We'd talked for hours and he'd promised to be better, to be honest from now on. But as I adjusted my veil, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a terrible mistake. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Emily? Eleanor's voice called. Can I come in? I hesitated, then called out, Yes, come in. Eleanor entered, her eyes widening as she took in my appearance. Oh, Emily, you look beautiful. I tried to smile, but it felt forced. Thank you, Eleanor. She approached me, her face etched with concern. Are you sure about this, dear? After everything that's happened? I turned back to the mirror, avoiding her gaze. Michael explained everything. He was just upset about his father. We're going to work through it together. Eleanor's reflection frowned. Emily, I know my son. He's not always... Please, I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. I've made my decision. Eleanor nodded, her eyes sad. All right, dear, I just want you to be happy. As she left, I felt a pang of guilt. Eleanor had become such a source of comfort these past weeks, but she was still Michael's mother. I couldn't keep relying on her. The ceremony was a blur. I walked down the aisle, my eyes locked on Michael. He looked handsome in his tux, his smile bright and reassuring. But as I reached him, I noticed a slight tremor in his hands. We exchanged vows, Michael's voice steady as he promised love and fidelity. When it was my turn, I hesitated for just a moment, my doubts threatening to choke me. But I pushed through, the words leaving my lips even as my heart raced with uncertainty. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared, and Michael pulled me in for a kiss. The small crowd of family and friends applauded, but it sounded distant and muffled to my ears. At the reception, I plastered on a smile, accepting congratulations and posing for photos. But my eyes kept drifting to Michael, watching as he downed glass after glass of champagne. Are you okay? I whispered during a quiet moment. He grinned, his eyes slightly unfocused. Never better, babe. We did it. As the night wore on, Michael became more boisterous, his laughter too loud, his movements unsteady. I saw Eleanor watching him with a mix of concern and resignation. Finally, as the last guests were leaving, Michael stumbled, nearly knocking over the gift table. I rushed to steady him, the smell of alcohol heavy on his breath. I think it's time we went home, I said softly. He laughed, pulling me close. Home? But the party's just getting started. I extricated myself from his grip, my patience wearing thin. Michael, please, you're drunk. His face darkened. Don't tell me what I am, he snapped, loud enough for the remaining guests to turn and stare. Embarrassment and anger flooded through me. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, I felt like I was drowning. Eleanor appeared at my side, her hand on my arm. Let me help you get him home, she offered quietly. I nodded, too tired to argue. As we maneuvered a protesting Michael into the car, Eleanor squeezed my hand. Remember, Emily, she said, her voice low and urgent, you always have a choice. As we drove away, Michael already passed out in the back seat, her words echoed in my mind. A choice. But what choice did I have now? I was married. for better or for worse. Looking at Michael's slumped form in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the worst I'd signed up for? And if so, how much worse could it get? I zipped up the last suitcase, my heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Our honeymoon to Bali was just hours away, a chance to escape the tension of the past few weeks and start our married life on a positive note. Maybe, just maybe, this trip would be the fresh start Michael and I desperately needed. As I wheeled the luggage to the front door, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, honey," I answered, trying to keep my voice light. "Are you on your way home? Our flight's in 4 hours." There was a pause, then Michael's voice came through, strained and hesitant. I have some bad news." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "It's my mom," he said. "She's in the hospital, some kind of sudden illness. I'm with her now." I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. "Oh my God, is she okay? What happened?" "The doctors aren't sure yet," Michael replied. "But I don't think we can go on our honeymoon, not with Mom like this." The words hit me like a physical blow. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of frustration and disbelief. "Michael, are you sure? Can't your sister stay with her? We've been planning this trip for months." I know, he said, his voice rising. "But she's my mother, Emily. I can't just leave her like this." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. "Okay, I understand. Should I come to the hospital?" "No," Michael said quickly, then softened his tone. "No, that's okay. You stay home. I'll call you with updates." As I hung up, a nagging doubt crept into my mind. Something about Michael's tone, the way he'd refused my offer to come to the hospital, it didn't sit right. Before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed Eleanor's number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. I frowned, my unease growing. I paced the living room, my mind racing. What if Eleanor wasn't really sick? What if this was just another of Michael's lies? But why would he lie about this? Hours passed and still no word from Michael. My calls went straight to voicemail. By evening I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital. At the reception I asked for Eleanor's room number, only to be met with confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the nurse said, "but we don't have any patient by that name." My world tilted on its axis. That's impossible. My husband said she was admitted this morning." The nurse shook her head sympathetically. "I've been on shift all day. No, Eleanor has been admitted." I stumbled out of the hospital, my mind in chaos. Michael had lied. Again. But why? Where was he really? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, but the content made my blood run cold. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Meet me at the Bluebird Cafe in an hour if you want the truth. V. Vanessa, Michael's father's new wife, the woman at the center of all this chaos." I stood in the hospital parking lot, the weight of decision heavy on my shoulders. Should I meet this mysterious Vanessa? Should I confront Michael? Or should I finally listen to that voice inside me that had been screaming for weeks, telling me to run? My fingers hovered over my phone, ready to reply to the text. In that moment, I knew my decision would change everything. There was no going back from here. With a deep breath, I typed my response, sealing my fate with 4 simple words. "I'll be there. Emily." As I got into my car, heading towards the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a ruined honeymoon. This was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the man I thought I loved. My hands trembled as I pushed open the door to the Bluebird Cafe. The aroma of coffee and pastries did nothing to calm my frayed nerves. I scanned the room, my heart pounding, until I spotted a woman in the corner booth. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and I knew instantly this was Vanessa. As I slid into the seat across from her, she spoke first. "Emily, I presume? Thank you for coming." I nodded, studying her face. She was beautiful, with an air of confidence that made me feel instantly inadequate. "You said you had the truth about Michael. I'm listening." Vanessa sighed, pushing a manila folder across the table. "Everything you need to know is in here, but I warn you, it's not pretty." With shaking hands, I opened the folder. Photos spilled out. Michael with another woman, laughing, kissing. Dates stamped in the corner showed this wasn't just a one-time thing. It had been going on for months. "Who is she?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "His secretary," Vanessa replied. "But that's not all. Keep reading." I flipped through documents, bank statements, emails, even a copy of a lease agreement. The pieces started to fall into place, each revelation more devastating than the last. He's been embezzling from his company, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. And he's planning to leave the country? Vanessa nodded grimly. With her? The honeymoon cancellation? It was just an excuse. He's planning to disappear with the money and his mistress. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal. But why? Why tell me all this? Because Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes intense. Michael isn't just hurting you, he's hurting everyone around him, including his father, my husband. We want to stop him before it's too late. Just then, my phone rang. Eleanor's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice shaky. Eleanor? Emily, dear. I've been trying to reach you. Is everything all right? Michael said you two had to cancel your honeymoon because of me, but I'm perfectly fine. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I ended the call, my mind racing. She's not sick. She never was. Vanessa's expression was a mix of sympathy and determination. Now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I stood up abruptly, a plan forming in my mind. I'm going to confront him. And then I'm going on that honeymoon, but not with Michael. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? A grim smile played on my lips. I'm taking Eleanor instead. Let's see how Michael likes it when his lies catch up to him. I rushed home, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and plans. As I burst through the door, I found Michael packing a suitcase. Em, he exclaimed, surprise and guilt flashing across his face. I thought you'd be out. I was just... Packing for our canceled honeymoon? I interrupted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Or maybe for your little getaway with your secretary. The color drained from Michael's face. What are you talking about? I threw the folder on the bed, photos and documents scattering. I know everything, Michael. The affair, the embezzlement, all of it. He lunged for the folder, but I was quicker. I snatched it back, backing away. Don't even think about it. It's over, Michael. I'm leaving and I'm taking everything we have. You'll have nothing left when I'm done. Michael's expression morphed from shock to anger. He advanced towards me, his fists clenched. You can't do this to me. I won't let you. Fear coursed through me, but I stood my ground. Try and stop me. I dare you. As Michael raised his hand, the front door burst open. Eleanor rushed in, her face a mask of fury. Michael Andrew Thompson, don't you dare touch her. Michael froze, his eyes darting between Eleanor and me. I took advantage of his confusion, grabbing my pre-packed suitcase. Come on, Eleanor, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. We have a plane to catch. As we walked out, leaving a stunned Michael behind, I felt a strange mix of pain, relief, and exhilaration. The life I thought I knew was over, but a new chapter was just beginning. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The moment I stepped through our front door, the tension in the air was palpable. Michael sat on the couch, his face a mask of barely contained anger. Our impromptu honeymoon with Eleanor had given me time to gather my thoughts, but nothing could have prepared me for this confrontation. Welcome home, Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Did you enjoy your little vacation with my mother? I dropped my suitcase, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Cut the act, Michael. We both know what's really going on here. He stood, his eyes flashing dangerously. Oh, and what exactly is that, Emily? Your affair, for starters, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. And let's not forget the embezzlement. Did you really think you could just run away with your secretary and all that stolen money? Michael's face paled, then flushed with anger. Who told you? Was it Vanessa? That meddling bitch? It doesn't matter who told me, I shot back. What matters is that it's true, isn't it, Michael? He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You don't understand. I had no choice. I wrenched away from him, my heart pounding. No choice? You had every choice. You chose to lie, to cheat, to steal. I did it for us, he yelled, his composure crumbling. For our future, I laughed bitterly. Our future. There is no our anymore, Michael. You destroyed that the moment you decided to betray me. Suddenly, the door burst open. Eleanor rushed in, followed by a man I'd never seen before. Michael's face drained of all color. Dad? He whispered, his voice small and uncertain. The man, Michael's father, stepped forward, his face a mix of sadness and determination. It's time to face the music, son. Michael's eyes darted between us all, like a cornered animal. You don't understand, any of you. I was going to make it right. I just needed more time. More time for what? I demanded. More lies? More betrayal? Eleanor moved to my side, her hand on my shoulder. Emily, dear, I'm so sorry. I never imagined Michael would go this far. As the reality of the situation crashed down around us, Michael's facade finally crumbled. He sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But his words rang hollow in my ears. The man I thought I knew, the man I had loved for 10 years and married just weeks ago, was a stranger to me now. It's over, Michael, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I want a divorce. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Emily, please. We can work this out. I'll make it right, I swear. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. No, Michael, you've had your chances. I'm done. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers entered, their faces grim. Michael Thompson? One of them said. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement and fraud. As they read him his rights and led him away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The life I thought I had, the future I had planned, it was all gone in an instant. Eleanor wrapped her arm around me as we watched Michael being driven away. What will you do now, dear? She asked softly. I took a deep breath, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally start living for myself. As the police car disappeared around the corner, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with uncertainty, but also with the promise of freedom and self-discovery. The courthouse loomed before me, a monument to the end of my marriage and the beginning of my new life. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what lay ahead. Eleanor's reassuring hand on my shoulder gave me the strength to push open the heavy doors. As we entered the courtroom, I saw Michael for the first time since his arrest. He looked haggard, his once confident demeanor replaced by a shell of a man. Our eyes met briefly, and I felt a twinge of something. Not love, not anymore, but a complex mixture of pity, anger, and regret. The proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon and formalities. I barely registered the words until the judge addressed me directly. Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to make a statement before the court renders its decision? I stood, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. Yes, Your Honor. As I faced the courtroom, I saw not just Michael, but the faces of those whose lives he'd affected, his parents, our friends, even his former secretary, who looked as broken as I felt. 10 years ago, I fell in love with a man I thought I knew, I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. I built my life around him, dreamed of a future with him, but that man never truly existed. Instead, I married a stranger, a liar, a cheater, a thief. Michael flinched at my words, but I pressed on. I stand here today not just as a victim of his crimes, but as a survivor. I've lost my marriage, my trust, and the future I thought I'd have. But I've gained something too, the truth and the strength to face it. I turned to Michael, meeting his gaze head-on. I forgive you, Michael. Not for your sake, but for mine. I refuse to let your betrayal define me or my future. As I sat down, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The judge's verdict came swiftly. Michael was sentenced to prison for his financial crimes, and our divorce was granted. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor enveloped me in a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, Emily, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I pulled back, studying her face. Eleanor, I don't know how to thank you for everything. She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Oh, my dear, you don't need to thank me. Your family, no matter what. Those words, so simple yet so profound, broke something open inside me. I began to sob, releasing all the pain, anger, and fear I'd been holding on to for so long. Eleanor held me, her presence a balm to my battered soul. As my tears subsided, I realized something fundamental had shifted within me. The betrayal still hurt, the wounds were still raw, but I was no longer defined by them. I was more than Michael's ex-wife, more than a victim of his deceit. I was Emily, strong, resilient, and ready to write my own story. What now? Eleanor asked gently as we walked away from the courthouse. I took a deep breath, feeling the warm sun on my face and the promise of possibility in the air. Now I start over. I find out who I am without Michael, without the lies and the doubt. Eleanor squeezed my hand. And you won't be alone. I'll be right here every step of the way. I smiled, feeling a genuine spark of hope for the first time in months. I know. And that means more to me than you could ever know. As we drove away, leaving behind the shattered remains of my old life, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges I couldn't yet imagine. But I was ready to face them, armed with the truth, supported by unexpected friendships, and fueled by a newfound belief in myself. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had also set me free. And in that freedom, I found the strength to embrace the unknown, to forgive without forgetting, and to love again, starting with myself. As Eleanor and I planned a celebratory dinner, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful relationships can bloom from the ashes of betrayal. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time I would be the author of my own happily ever after.